Hello and welcome to The Information, where you'll get all the information on the latest in electronic, indie pop, and experimental music. Today we have an album review. We're reviewing the new Wet album, Still Run. Wet are a Brooklyn duo who were a trio and are headed up by vocalist and lyricist Kelly Zutro, somewhere between the release of their debut 2016 record, Don't You, and the start of production on their latest record here, Still Run. Their third member, Marty Selkow, who was their guitarist, decided to leave the band. And I only mention this because I believe that this is the main reason for the stylistic change and sound change on this record here from Don't You. Back on their debut record, we had a lot more guitar-driven R&B and synth-pop, indie electronic music. We get more natural and organic instrumentation here. There's less focus on electronics and guitar. They do tend to get swapped out primarily with a big string section here, as well as some pedal steel, which is played by Daniel Aged of Inc No World. And even the intro track is a collaborative effort with some backing vocals from Starchild and The New Romantic. This title track is an airy acoustic number with some delicate fingerpick guitar. There's some soft down-tempo drumming, a very strangely alt-country vibe to this song. Not that it doesn't fit the band, but that's the sound that they try to introduce to the listeners first and foremost on the record, is kind of a surprising turn and an unexpected one. The addition of the strings and pedal steel do show up on here as well, which are a nice touch. The second track on the album is called There's a Reason. It's very spacey, very almost generically atmospheric. It's a very straightforward, traditional, mostly milquetoast pop song. It's a little bare bones up until about the back half of the track, when some pedal steel and strings again get introduced into the track. The best part about this song is easily the chorus. I feel like it gets fleshed out a lot better there, and it is mildly catchy as well. It's certainly a very pleasant song to the ears, but nothing I would necessarily write home about either. On the next track, You're Not Wrong, we hear some vocals clipping in the mix almost immediately as soon as the song starts, and that's not really a good sign when you're trying to work hard on a follow-up that got pretty much panned to death by Pitchfork, especially. I think they gave it the debut record a 4. I don't know how anybody didn't notice that, or maybe they liked it and thought it was a good stylistic choice, which if they thought that, they were wrong. But the song itself doesn't really get much better beyond that. There are some really cliche, up-tempo, sparkly piano notes that are just played like it's a car commercial or something. There are some busy stop and start drums here that create a weird rhythm. There's an introduction of what I think is some bassoon. Maybe it's like a saxophone, sort of creating accents in the song. And the chord progression here, especially during the bridge and then into the chorus, reminds me of like an old, like 1950s Motown song or like doo-wop song or something like that. It does give it a classy, contemporary yet retro feel, but the sloppy production kind of finishes things off with some tambourine that is extremely offbeat that comes in around the 2-minute mark. I'm not really sure why they didn't bother to clean that up, or at least do a better quality recorded version of it, because it sounds like it's very dull, very flat as well. The peaks and valleys of this record continue on the next track, where we get what I think is the best song on the record, Lately. This song to me reminds me most of what they were doing best on their debut album, Don't You. The intro is very dreamy and minimal, and Zutro's vocals are very quiet and hushed, but also a little passionate here as well. The bass is smooth and the synths are traditionally lush. This is another track with a great chorus. We've got some gorgeous piano and some punchy syncopated drums. Lyrically here, we're not treading any new ground. Kelly is pretty much just talking about how she is the only one that ends up contributing to her relationship. Things seem very one-sided and off balance, and she mentions in the chorus how the man hasn't done anything for her lately, although it sounds like in the context of the song he hasn't done much of anything at all at any point. So even though the vocals are a little generic, I do like the vocal melody and the way that they're presented in the song here. On the track 11 Hours, we get another low point of the record, unfortunately. This one to me almost seemed like a demo that should have been left on the cutting room floor, or like a B-sides release or something. Nothing about this song is on the same quality across the board as any other song on this record. The just in general sound quality of the voice, it sounds like it was recorded on a laptop mic or something. The intro is very sparse. We get spots of pedal steel guitar and a little bit of reverby piano. I do like the somewhat non-traditional steady electronic beat here, but ultimately, even as the chorus does kind of add some backing vocals and some more strings, I feel like in general it's just so weirdly empty and skeletal that it barely registers. This Woman Loves You is another song that dips its toes into the alt country and sort of almost folksy side of things. There's a strong presence of the mandolin here, which really brings that sense home. There's also an uplifting synth pad and some muted drums as well that kind of sit in the background, not really trying to make too much of a fuss. I like the backing vocals here a little bit. I'm not sure who they're from. I know it isn't just Kelly Zutro's vocals, like pitched up or pitched down, because there's a different timbre to it. But lyrically, we have some weird parallels here. She is talking about how she's feeling stifled in a relationship and how she kind of loves this person regardless of their cruddy behavior. She'll kind of love you through anything regardless of what you do to her, which isn't, I guess, really the best message. But what kind of confuses me is the metaphor of the man in this situation she replaces with America, because she mentions that she'll love him from sea to shining sea, and she also makes other references literally to like America and this country. It's an okay enough metaphor, but I just don't understand the need to make it in the first place. You can just literally talk about the relationship with the guy. I mean, this has kind of been the theme lyrically that you've been going over on this record so far, so why not just keep that up? Why introduce a metaphor and kind of make things more complex than they have to be, like 6 songs in at this point? It just doesn't really make much sense to me. That being said, the best part of the song is the last 30 seconds. It switches things up a little bit, adds what I think are some xylophone, and the nice guitar tones here as well are very nice. But overall it ends itself too abruptly. It just kind of like sucks itself out of all the energy that it had just so it can end right there. The track Out of Tune is one of the several ballads on the album. I like the warm 80s synth chords of the introduction here. However, I think it kind of loses steam once it turns into some piano chords, basically like a lukewarm Elton John imitation, or maybe like some instrumentation that you would have found on the latest Father John Misty record, God's Favorite Customer. Just the tempo is very flaccid and weak here. It's not very interesting or something that holds your attention. Again though, I do find the best moment on this track to be towards the end, past pretty much the 2-minute 50-second mark. It does build quite nicely, if predictably, with some grandiose string swells and some angelic vocal deliveries, again from Zutro. I like how she sings the lyrics, "There's so much that we never got to do. Maybe we still will sometime soon. Well, maybe not now, but soon." It definitely provides the record with one of the few emotional and impactful moments. The track Visitor, which is one of the 2 longer songs on the record, the second to go over almost 5.5 minutes in length. This song here, I also found another issue with the vocals being mixed a little too loudly, mostly during the chorus here. This is definitely another ballad here. We have some very majestic, slow piano chords, and the drums and toms especially slam down, and cymbals crash with a larger scale than we've heard on previous songs so far. Ultimately, I'm not really one for more dramatic songs, so this one kind of didn't really register well with me either, unfortunately. Some of the instrumentation towards the back half of the track does impress me more, though. There are some synths that come in with some white noise, and I do like those a lot. It just adds some texture to an album that has pretty much been kind of textureless and smooth and uniform up until this point. And then as a finale, we get a real downer of a song called Love Is Not Enough. This is pretty much a lo-fi piano passage the whole way through. It does add some drums here towards the end, but overall, the lyrics here are surprisingly dark, especially for a wet song. I haven't heard lyrics that are this visceral up until this point from any song that they've put out. The lyrics that pretty much start the song off are the ones that stuck in my mind. It says, "Roll her over in the knee-high water, and they expose a part of her that's never been seen before. People showing up just to look and laugh." So it almost sounds as though, and I could be wrong, but it sounds like there's this image of like a dead body washing up on shore or something. I don't know if that dead body is the metaphor for love, or if it's just trying to paint a literal picture of someone dead and like them examining them. Lyrically here, she is trying to stay positive in the face of destruction. She does say, "Don't let them tell you love is not enough" during the chorus here. But in the third verse here, she talks about a previous relationship again. She says, "The love we had, it grew tall like a flower, then all at once it will topple over, and it left with yourself and the ghost of another." So even though she's trying to stay positive, she has had these past experiences where indeed love has not been enough. So it's tough for her to kind of reconcile with love being this majestic, beautiful thing, but also knowing the power that it holds, both positive and negative, and the repercussions it has. This is definitely the most instrumentally spare track, even beating out 11 hours. For the most part, this is pretty much just piano and vocals for the entirety of the runtime. I do like the bowed strings here, but they quickly retreat every time they show up. They don't really want to stay there for too long. And around the 3:40 mark, they come in a little bit more aggressively, and they kind of quiver and shake. And it reminds me a little bit of like the score for some of the more dramatic scenes of the show Lost. It does build on the downcast, harrowing vibe of the song. For those who are familiar with the work of C. Olina, this is definitely something that was a comparison in my mind as well here. Overall, it's a surprisingly dark way to end the record. And what I really have to say about this is, while I do appreciate that Still Run has longer run times, longer song lengths, and more experimentation with, more instruments like the pedal steel and the strings here, and piano as well, I feel like ultimately it strays too far from what made their first record more affecting and more memorable, in my opinion, even though Pitchfork obviously gave it a 4.0, so they weren't the biggest fan, but I personally enjoyed it quite a bit. It just kind of seems like they're trading out one genre cliche for another, with these overwrought ballads and underwritten alt-country songs. And I'm still going to be looking forward to whatever the next wet release is coming down the pipeline. But I do have to say that in the meantime, I'd probably have to give this a decent to strong 5, I would say. But of course, let me know what you guys thought of this record. It just came out not too long ago, so if you guys have a favorite or least favorite track, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you agree, disagree. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. And thanks as always for watching The Information.